Everybody, video here for you today. We're going to go back to ancient America for one more video before I go to other parts of the world for my next few videos. I have covered ancient ruins in every state in the United States except for Delaware and Nebraska. I mentioned Nebraska in one of my Carolina Bay videos. Features like that in this state, but haven't done an individual video on Nebraska until today. This is the Medicine Creek Reservoir State Recreation Site. Right down here. It was right down here in 1987 that archaeologists found the remains of a mammoth along the shoreline here. I'm not sure exactly where, but they determined that mammoth to be about 18,000 years old, and there was hints that humans were involved in butchering it, so that would make this one of the older sites in the United States if that proved out to be true. Here is one of the websites I will leave below, Center for American Paleolithic Research, discovering evidence of the earliest people in the Americas. And here is the name of the site, the Sena site. And here they are excavating the mammoth they discovered in 1987, determined to be about 18,500 years old. Here is a pic from the shore of the reservoir. They are excavating the mammoth, and I believe these are rib bones sticking out of the ground here in one excavation pit. Now, I found a couple good PDFs on this discovery, and there's nothing on YouTube, an individual video on this, I don't think, but it says the Sena mammoth site consists of a partial adult mammoth skeleton buried 3.5 meters deep in Lake Wisconsin loess overlying alluvial terrace fill along the Medicine Creek Reservoir. And just going down here, there are a few other sites nearby where similar discoveries were made. The Lovewell site is one of them, but there is a little map of northern Kansas, northeast Colorado, and southern Nebraska there showing where these discoveries were made. But just going on, reading here, it gives some interesting pictures here of what was found. It says spirally fractured limb bone at the Sena mammoth site. The large fragment of femur on the right is the largest piece of limb bone recovered. And they just don't think this was made by natural occurrence. They think humans were involved, at least a lot of people do. But it's controversial, of course, when you go back that far in time. It says 2 complete ribs and small spirally fractured limb bone fragment underlying the distal end of a shorter rib. Arrow points to limb bone fragment. Down here at the bottom right, it says refit of 4 pieces of spirally fractured femur showing a dynamic loading point and spiral fractures emanating from the impact point. And here, I believe, are where those 4 pieces were found in situ. Here's some more looks at what was found at the Sena site, some diagrams, but I will leave these links below if you want to read into this a little more and why they think that humans were involved in taking this mammoth apart and not natural processes or scavengers. Here is another PDF I found. I will leave the link below. Big Game Hunters, the Ice Age, and the First Immigrants. And here are some late Paleo-Indian points found in Nebraska. This is written by John Bozell, Curator of Anthropology, Nebraska State Historical Society. But this is a good article here. Has some pics of some projectile points, talks about the pre-Clovis debate. And here is a look from the shore here. I believe that is the pic I showed earlier, just flipped. It says, archaeologists from the University of Nebraska State Museum and Bureau of Reclamation excavate the Sena mammoth site in a shear loess bank at Medicine Creek Reservoir in Frontier County. Unusual fracture patterns in the 18,000-year-old mammoth bones suggest they may have been broken by humans. 2 mammoth ribs have been exposed in the grid in the foreground right there. But were humans here? Did they eat this mammoth? Were they existing 18,000 years ago with the megafauna found around this water area here? It says, among the most controversial topics in American archaeology for the past 100 years has been dating the arrival of humans in the Americas. Let's just read here. It says the Sena site, which archaeologists have been excavating since 1988, suggests people were processing mammoths during the last glacial maximum when the ice sheets were as far south as South Dakota-Nebraska border along the Missouri River. It says the site was located by Bureau of Reclamation archaeologists Bob Blasing and Brad Coutant during a routine shoreline survey of the Medicine Creek Reservoir. In the fall of 1988, David May, a geomorphologist with the University of Northern Iowa, and I conducted preliminary research there. Excavations took place in 1989, 1990, 91, and 93, funded by the Bureau of Reclamation, an agency of the U.S. Department of the Interior. The site is situated in a windblown low soil deposited during the last glacial period when the climate was cooler and drier than it is now. It says, we are now excavating in a depth of 11 feet below the surface, although there may have been as much as 20 to 25 feet of loess over the Mammoth at one time. Radiocarbon dating of the soil and bones dates the site to between 18,000 and 19,000 years ago. During the preliminary investigation, we did not know whether this mammoth that had died was by natural causes or had been killed or processed by humans, which would make it an archaeological site. After test excavation, we began to think it was an archaeological site based on the highly fractured nature of the limb bones. They talk about fracturing in the bones that really could only have been made by humans. One is called simply flaking, and the other is described as high velocity impacts. So that's why they think humans were involved in this 18,500-year-old mammoth here. Now, concluding this article, they go over the reasons why other factors could not have made these fractures in these bones, including carnivores. They talk about carnivores working their way from the joints into the main shaft of the bone. At both sites, articular ends are intact, but the limb shafts are heavily broken. It says, moreover, no carnivore of the glacial period could get a mammoth femur into its mouth and crush it in mid-shaft. But just going on here, it says, thus, all known possible natural causes of bone breakage have been eliminated. We know that people broke and flaked mammoth bones 11,000 years ago, and that experiments with elephant limb bones show the same patterns of breakage and flaking can be reproduced today. We also know that bone flakes have been demonstrated to be good cutting tools during butchering experiments on modern elephants. The only plausible explanation remaining is that the ancestors of the modern Native Americans were processing mammoths of the Great Plains of North America at least 18,000 years ago. Here is a look at the archaeological site from 1989. One of these fractured bones here, and humans seem to want to get into these mammoth bones a long time ago. A little bit more on that coming up. But one thing archaeologists did note is this mammoth skeleton was scattered unusually. Usually when you find a mammoth, it's pretty much intact and the bones are kind of where they should be. And sometimes they get scattered if there's a bad flood or something. But these were unusually scattered around this immediate vicinity. So that is another thing that gave them a clue that maybe humans were involved here. It talks about taphonomy used at the site. It says taphonomy is a multidisciplinary study of cultural and natural processes that may be responsible for the arrangement of objects found in an archaeological site. The Sena skeleton had several bone flakes associated with it. These bone flakes were identical to the long, thin slivers of flint that have been documented as byproducts that flake off as humans chip stones to make sharp tools. It says, in addition, some of the thick mammoth bones were split apart in ways that could have only happened with a heavy blow. They believe that the humans used large cobblestones to retrieve the nutritious bone marrow in the middle. Experiments with modern elephant bones splintered by rocks produce the same kind of fractures. And that is very interesting. I have talked about humans using bone marrow in very ancient sites, going way back in history, including the over 100,000-year-old Cerruti site in San Diego. Here are some Paleo-Indian points found in Nebraska. Some of these go back 11,500 years. But were humans here over 18,000 years ago processing these mammoth bones for food, for bone marrow? Well, there seems to be some pretty good evidence of that. No Clovis camps have been found around this lake, but there has been some Folsom sites and other camps that date back over 10,000 years. But are archaeologists digging down in this area looking for Clovis sites? It seems like a lot of these early sites that we find purely by accident. That is my video on the Sena mammoth, over 18,000 years old. Evidence of humans manufacturing the bones, maybe getting the bone marrow out. But what do we know about this period of history coming from so long ago? Well, not much, but it doesn't surprise me so much. These early dates anymore. Seems humans have been in North America for a heck of a long time. But that is my first video coming from Nebraska. Hope you thought that was cool. And you all have a very nice day.